The thing that's so gripping about this situation is that we're not dealing with your typical impeachment. This is totally uncharted territory for South Korea.
Yeah, and to think that all this started with what seemed like a really rash decision.
Oh yeah, the 6-hour martial law declaration? Like, where'd that come from?
Well, I think to grasp the magnitude of this whole thing, we need to understand just how sensitive this issue of martial law is in Korea. I mean, our history with military dictatorship, it makes even a brief glimpse of military rule deeply unsettling for a lot of these folks here.
Right. It's like that collective memory is still so raw that any sort of, move in that direction, it's just going to hit a nerve.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what happened. Yoon's martial law declaration, although incredibly short-lived, it instantly triggered massive public backlash and, comparisons to that really dark period in our past.
So what was his reasoning for invoking martial law in the first place? Like, what was his justification?
Well, desperation. Yoon claimed that the opposition party was deliberately crippling his government. He pointed to them slashing budgets and persistently trying to impeach his appointees. It seems like this power struggle was brewing, and he just felt really cornered.
But wouldn't that then raise the question of whether his response was proportionate to the situation? I mean, could his complaints really justify such a drastic measure as martial law?
Well, that's where most people seem to agree that the biggest problem lies. Even the head of the Korean Bar Association has publicly stated that Yoon's grievances simply did not meet the constitutional bar for a martial law declaration.
So it seems like it was a political miscalculation.
It really does seem that way.
A big one, potentially.
Yeah, big time.
But this was just the tip of the iceberg, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, this is just the beginning of the story.
This martial law declaration set off this whole chain reaction that ultimately led to his impeachment proceedings.
Oh, yeah, you could pretty much draw a straight line from the declaration to the impeachment proceedings.
So walk us through what happened in the National Assembly.
So the initial impeachment vote, now this was on December 7th, actually failed. Yoon's People Power Party boycotted the vote, pushing for resignation instead, as a less damaging alternative.
So it sounds like they were trying to shield him from the full force of an impeachment.
It certainly seems that way, yeah. They knew that impeachment carried a lot more weight than resignation. But just a week later, on December 14th, a second vote was held, and this time the vote was conducted by secret ballot. And the impeachment was successful this time.
It's like that secret ballot acted as like a truth serum.
I guess you could say that. 12 members of his own party broke rank and sided with the opposition, voting for impeachment. 12 additional members either abstained or cast invalid votes.
I see. So this was a clear indication that the support for Yoon within his own party was far more fragile than anyone had anticipated.
Yeah, I'll say.
But the plot thickens even further, doesn't it? Because it's not just impeachment. There's also a criminal investigation looming over it.
Well, as far as I understand, the focus of that investigation is on Yoon's actions during that brief period of martial law, especially the deployment of armed troops to the National Assembly.
So sending troops to the National Assembly, what was the rationale behind that decision? What was he hoping to achieve?
So this is kind of where the story takes a chilling turn. We have testimony from a colonel who led the Special Forces unit dispatched to the National Assembly. He stated under oath that he had direct orders to forcibly remove lawmakers from the assembly to prevent them from repealing the martial law declaration.
So, in essence, he was trying to silence the opposition through military force.
That's one way to put it, yeah.
What are the potential ramifications of an action like that?
Okay, so under South Korean law, This sort of action could be categorized as insurrection, which is essentially an attempt to overthrow or obstruct government institutions by force. And the penalties for this charge are incredibly severe, obviously, potentially even the death penalty or life imprisonment. That is, of course, if Yoon is found to be the mastermind behind it all.
Okay, oh wow. So we know that Yoon's former defense ministry and 2 former police chiefs have already been arrested and charged with complicity in this alleged insurrection.
Yeah, the situation is escalating really quickly, and the net is tightening around him.
It's not looking good for him.
Not looking good.
At all.
No.
So with this weight of an impeachment and this looming criminal investigation, how is Yoon responding to all this pressure?
Well, he's striking a very defiant tone. He's publicly vowed to fight the impeachment charges in court, and he's also released this pre-recorded speech highlighting all his accomplishments during his time in office.
Trying to save face a little bit.
Yeah, projecting an image of strength and resilience.
But wouldn't you say that his actions speak louder than any carefully crafted speech? I mean, the evidence seems to be mounting against him.
It's a classic case of actions have consequences, right?
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of actions, there's this particularly disturbing detail that was revealed from one of the testimonies of the head of the National Police Agency. Have you heard this?
So what was revealed?
So he revealed that while martial law was in effect, the military requested police assistance in locating and detaining 15 specific individuals.
15 individuals?
15.
Okay, who were they, and what was the justification for targeting them?
Well, this is where it gets really unsettling. The list included several prominent figures in the opposition, including leaders of some of the biggest political parties in the country. It seems that Yoon wasn't content with just silencing dissent within the National Assembly. He was looking to neutralize key opposition figures altogether.
So it's further solidifying these accusations of authoritarian overreach.
Against Yoon.
Against Yoon, yes.
That's right. And so it paints a really chilling picture of just how far he was willing to go to maintain his grip on power.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what lies ahead. So we know that Yoon has been impeached and he's banned from traveling, and now he's facing a very serious criminal investigation. What are his options at this point?
Well, he's in a precarious position.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Is there any way out of this corner that he's painted himself into?
Well, he's asserted his determination to challenge the impeachment in court. But the reality is the odds are stacked against him.
Okay, but what if, against all odds, the court rules in his favor?
Well, if that were to happen, it would undoubtedly throw gasoline onto an already volatile situation. I mean, it would deepen the political divisions within South Korea. It would further erode the public trust in the government and the judiciary. It would likely trigger widespread protests. But let's face it, the more likely scenario is that the court upholds the impeachment.
Okay, so what happens then? What does that mean for South Korea?
Well, in that case, a new election would have to be held within 2 months, plunging the country into this period of intense political uncertainty. It'll be a real scramble for power with all the major parties trying to capitalize on the situation.
And all of this is happening against a backdrop of rising tensions with North Korea and, President Trump coming into office. This internal turmoil couldn't have come at a worse time.
Absolutely. South Korea currently finds itself navigating this perfect storm of internal and external challenges. Yeah.
And let's not forget that in the midst of all this political drama, someone still has to run this country. Prime Minister Han Duck-soo has stepped in as interim leader, but his unelected status severely restricts his authority.
I hate to say it, but he's essentially a caretaker, a placeholder, unable to make any bold decisions or enact any meaningful reforms.
Yeah, so that leaves South Korea in a pretty vulnerable position, especially when it comes to dealing with these sort of external challenges. Because, I mean, think about it, prior to this whole crisis, Yoon was actively working to strengthen military ties with the US and Japan.
Right, that was a cornerstone of his foreign policy.
Right, and now his own actions have completely jeopardized those very relationships.
It's a stunning reversal of fortune.
Isn't it?
It really is.
And it also makes me wonder if this entire ordeal will have a chilling effect on future South Korean leaders.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, will they be more hesitant to make bold moves, fearing a severe backlash?
Yeah, I certainly think that this crisis could usher in an era of cautious, incremental decision-making, which could potentially hinder South Korea's ability to respond effectively, to unforeseen challenges.
Okay, so let's shift gears a bit and talk a little bit about the long-term implications of this crisis. You mentioned earlier that this whole thing has exposed deep political divisions within South Korea. And it seems like this whole situation has really shaken people's faith in the government, hasn't it?
Absolutely. This crisis has really laid bare these deep ideological rifts that have been simmering beneath the surface of South Korean society for years. And you know that this isn't just about Yoon's actions. It's about a fundamental clash of values and visions for the country's future.
It really makes you wonder if this could lead to lasting political instability.
It certainly is a valid concern. I think the situation could very well embolden extremist groups on both ends of the political spectrum. And it's also likely to fuel a surge in political activism as citizens become more engaged and vocal in demanding accountability from their leaders.
Yeah, it's a remarkable turn of events.
Yeah, it is.
So how do you think this crisis will ultimately impact our relationships with our international partners?
Well, in the short term, it's definitely going to create some friction because, let's face it, it's not going to be easy for the US and Japan to simply turn a blind eye to such blatant disregard for democratic norms, right? And so there will likely be calls for sanction, diplomatic censure, or maybe even a revaluation of military cooperation.
It sounds like this could have serious security implications for South Korea, especially considering the ever-present threat from North Korea.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. Yeah.
What a web this has become. It's been full of twists and turns. I gotta ask, what stands out to you as the most surprising aspect of this entire saga? Like, what is the element that really makes you stop and think?
It's a good question. One thing, huh? Well, for me, I'd have to say the one thing would have to be the sheer swiftness with which all of this unfolded. It was like watching a domino effect in action. You know what I mean? But that's a good thing because, as we talked about before, nothing good can come out of prolonged instability. And for that, I'd have to hand it to the people of South Korea. I'm still having trouble grasping just how quickly everybody has been responding to this entire ordeal as it unfolds. I mean, this has been a really tough few weeks for the people of South Korea, mentally and emotionally. And to see how organized and healthy that they keep the protests, it just really goes to show just how mature they are as a community. Hey.
Yeah. Oh, I'm totally with you there.
Really? What the hell, man?